Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I'm excited to get a great guest on the show today. I've got the founder of CrowdSec onto the podcast. And for those of you that don't know, they're an open-sourced multiplayer firewall that is able to analyze visitor behavior and provide an adapted response to all kinds of attacks, all by leveraging crowd power to generate a global IP reputation database that protects the user network. And as of today, users from over 110 countries have come together and have blocked around 700,000 plus malevolent IPs by quarter. He has a great story to share. He's a great guy too, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to France, where Philippe is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Philippe. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Philippe, the CEO and co-founder of CrowdSec, and we are open source software editor. We create an open source software that we distribute. And aside of that, we have also a SaaS product that is the one where we make money out and that helps us living. And for myself, I have a pen tester background, red team pen test, but back in the days, 20 years ago. So, it's over now.
If I was to take you back even further than those 20 years, can you remember where your passion for tech, cybersecurity and everything came from and what put you on this path? Or if we choose the Marvel route, what was your origin story?
Yeah, there are two components here because I've always been an entrepreneur. So I don't know where it came from really originally, but I told my parents around 16 that I would definitely love to be an entrepreneur. I don't know why actually, but that was, my own path or something like this. And they said, yeah, sure. But first you finish your studies and we'll discuss this after. So I finished my studies and they said, okay, deal is a deal. You can go your own path and create your own company. This is for the entrepreneur part. And for the security part, I remember quite clearly when I was a kiddo, we had those copied games, Juarez, we called it. So we were receiving those discs by the post office every week or whatever. And some people did crack those games. They removed the security. So now I'm paying all my games and I'm paying the industry back. No worries. But by then, I have to admit, and there were those names on top of the cracks with a little intro. And whomever did the job and fixed the assembler code with this. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. They can go around protections like this. And fast forward in time, I end up into my engineer school. And I meet a guy, I discuss with him, I did those crack, or at least a good part of them. What? But you're my age. Yes. So when I was playing with the game you cracked, I was 10, meaning, I was 10 too. I'm like, holy crap. What are you able to do now? And he showed me, and it was like an eye-opening moment.
What a great story. And of course, it was that path that led you to CrowdSec, which put you on my radar, especially when I learned about your collaborative approach to outnumber cybercriminals. But can you expand on that and what you do for everyone listening?
Yeah, sure. It goes back to why cybercriminals are ahead of us. They are in very comfortable zone, actually. Time is on their side because they choose when. They choose when they attack you. They detect the vulnerability. You never get to know when there's a vulnerability out, barely when there's a patch out, and even less when you can apply it, all right? So time is on their side. Then the perimeter speaks for them as well because it's bigger than ever. There are stuff pretty much all around the place in containers, in cloud drives, in SaaS, in VMs, in whatever, plus VPNs, plus supply chain. That's awfully complicated nowadays. So perimeter is also on their side and money is on their side because if you spend zillions, you nevertheless get hacked. Like we saw it for big banks and all, and they don't spend zillions to attack you. They are in a very comfortable zone. They have a 3-of-a-kind ace in their hand and they attack you. So what is our own strength? If you think about it in this way, and this is what we did for CrowdSec, is like the only thing where we beat them is a number. Like for one cyber criminal, we are 100 sysadmin, DevOps, SecOps, willing to make the internet work properly for people to work, make their living, enjoy, entertain, and everything we do over the internet. So this ratio, 100-1, is speaking in our favor. So it's a strength on our end. It's a demographic strength. The second thing that also speaks on our end as really pro for us is that they don't have an unlimited number of IP addresses, right? And when they attack you, they need to shelter to hide behind an IP address, not to reveal their real identity. And also they need a lot of them to leverage a meaningful amount of resources to be efficient in their daily operations. So what we do is we are drying out the sole weak link in their own supply chain using our only strength. So we dry their IP pool, which is not infinite, using our strength, which is the number of the people.
Love that. And you've been on an incredible journey at CrowdSec. And I think I was reading earlier that users come from over 110 countries, and you approximately blocks over 700,000 malevolent IPs by quarter. And a couple of years ago, I think it was December 2020, you also raised $5 million in funding. So it sounds like you've been on an incredible journey there. So can you tell me a little bit more about the story behind that success too?
Yeah, what's funny is we were told that it was a bit of a crazy project because we're still pre-revenue. Honestly, we don't care much about revenue. I should not say this publicly. I don't care really. It's open source. It's really for free. There's no catch here. So if you partake into the network and you send back information to the network to help us all, then, you're protecting the next door hospital. You're protecting your granny. You're protecting everyone else over the internet while protecting yourself. And this is all for free. So at some point, we needed some people to invest money to, help us run the company because DevSecOps don't come cheap these days. And that's fine by me because they have an excellent skill set that is very research on the market that people want them in their team. So how do you weigh that out? You offer something, but on the other hand, the company has to grow in value. And the thing we told our investors, we're creating a gold mine here. We're creating the biggest ever CTI network on Earth. We want to have the real-time map of the bad IPs over the internet with 1 million machines collecting into this network, which would be magnitude bigger than whatever was done before in this space. And this will be our gold mine. So trust me, when we have a gold mine, someone will lend us a caterpillar to dig into it. There's no problem around that. Yes, I don't have the exact way we monetize stuff. It's definitely not going to be toward the community. It's always going to be for free toward them because they are the one making us stronger. They are the one making us worth something in the first place. So it would be totally unfair to monetize on their back. So we give them back as much as we want and as much as we can. And on the other hand, we'll have a premium product that is, if you don't partake into this network, you can still benefit from the knowledge of the crowd, but you have to pay a subscription for that, which sounds fair to me.
Yeah. And I'm curious, from everything that you're seeing out there across the landscape, do you think there's an increase in malevolent IP attacks? Are they growing in size? And for users listening, how can everyday users equip themselves to better protect themselves and protect their data?
So for the first part of the question, are there more IPs? I don't know, because we have no backlog over the last decade. What I know, though, is I made a little experiment, I think it was roughly 10 years ago. And I've put my machine exposed over the internet, one machine, and I listened to how many times it was polled per day, how many query I had per day. And I did the same in 2019. And in 2019, I had exactly 10 times signals per day, 10 times more query on my machine per day that were unsolicited query last degree. This machine didn't host anything, was not even recorded in a DNS or whatever. So it was a no one IP, right? It was 10 times more frequently polled than it was back in 2009. So that gives a magnitude, if anything. And then the other thing we see is IPs are extremely specialized. Most of them, more than 17%, they are doing one job and one job only. They are scanning for VoIP or scanning for credentials or brute forcing stuff or scanning the internet or trying to do credit card stuffing or layer 7 DDoS or ransomware. It's a very structured industry and you can see it into the way IPs are used. And another thing we see is 80% of them are constantly nefarious. It's not they are used and dropped and then someone else uses them back for good reasons. No, they are constantly nefarious and we've never seen them doing any good stuff. They are constantly doing whatever they are doing. So it's really interesting because it gives the people an opportunity to have a very strong first line of defense. Let's just ban those. Then it doesn't make sense at all to let the number 31 Jingrong Street AS that is known to be access your system. This stuff has been forever aggressive for the last 20 years. The saying is, if you've never been visited by number 31 Jingrong Street, you don't exist over the internet. So it's constantly scanning you. So how can you protect yourself? Well, you can use the software, you can download it, you can install it, it's for free, and it will start protecting you according to scenarios you selected. And it will send you constantly IPs that are aggressive toward this, for example, I don't know, web commerce or stuff like that.
And another thing that put you guys on my radar was when I was reading about where you were saying that why multiplayer firewalls can help limit zero attacks and minimize cyberware from attempting to divide and conquer businesses. Can you expand on that point too?
Yeah, the multiplayer firewall has actually been coined by a friend of mine working at Google, and actually Nicolas Ruff. And actually he's right. He's really right. This is what it is. It's a firewall is basically blocking IPs based on a rule set. The only thing that was very, I would say, dumb by then is like firewalls have static rule set. First of all, it's you're allowed, you're not allowed. If you take the comparison with a nightclub, it would be like you wear sneakers, you have a good car, and you have a young lady at your arm and stuff, and you seem to be wealthy, you're welcome in the club. Which doesn't speak for the fact that you've made a training in Syria or in Libya last week. And so those rule sets are dumb. And the second thing, beyond the fact that we would want it to be more dynamic in a sense, is if we have a system that is blocking and allowing APs, not just based on the rule set, but based on both, on two things, on behavior, what does this IP is trying to do at your, and on reputation, like what did this IP do in the past? Because it's really interesting to take those two factors in consideration and not just one.
And what other trends are you seeing on the threat landscape? Is there anything that stands out to you?
That was really interesting with the Log4j thing lately. We've all been up at night with this thing. We released a scenario like the same day as the vulnerability was made public. And we started to catch IPs that were aggressive toward this. And it's a small number of them, actually. We have 3.5K IP that are really aggressive toward this vulnerability. It speaks for a lot of things, like opportunistic people are using those IPs because it was known, an unknown vulnerability before, and then it became known, and then people started to look for it. But it's not so many people actually being very opportunistic like this. If we don't see everything, say it like this, and it's 3 times more, it's just 10,000 IPs over the internet trying to leverage Log4j. So it's definitely a challenge we can tackle. And it's something we see on most fronts. Since they are very specialized, there are not so many of them. Let me give you an example for credit card fraud, for example, credit card stuffing, as we call it. So someone, cybercriminal, buy a bunch of credit card numbers, and he wants to validate them before reselling the lot to someone else. How does it work? He takes this credit card number and tries them against a PSP, a payment processor, on a web shop. And he makes few transactions of $0.1 or some stuff like that, not to raise attention of the legitimate owner of the card. And he tries like tens of thousands of cards, validate the number, and resell them for a profit. One guy usually have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 IP to do this. Once you dried out this pool, it cannot hurt you anymore. And there are not so many people doing this in the world. As, weird as it can sound. We speak about maybe tens, maybe hundreds of people, but not millions. So we speak about what? 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 IPs? It's nothing. It's literally nothing. It's something that the crowd can tackle in one day. We can get rid of those pests in one day. Because the day this guy has no more IP, he has to generate more, to ransom more, to rent, to whatever, to buy on the black market or whatever. And it's a pain for him. He loses time and he's off ops for a while. So it's exactly what we're up to. We're bringing the war on their...
I love your ethos here and how everybody's stronger when they work together to overcome a problem. So how do you see open source cybersecurity crowd platforms combating these problems that we're talking about here?
It was obvious for us, right? Yeah. So the inspiration was Waze in the first place. I have to give them credit for that. What they did on the road was an eye opener for me. Okay, all together we can tackle anything and everything. And this thing now knows everything around the world, all the traffic jam issues, the holes in the road, the traffic jam, whatever. It's really impressive. Now, back to our question is like, how do we get this software on a large scale? Well, Waze was for free. That's how they killed Coyote or other pre-existing GPS, right? It has to be free, first of all. Otherwise, there's a friction in adoption. Second thing is, since it's free and we want it to be spread across the globe, it has to be compatible with a lot of target systems and a lot of environments and a lot of infrastructure and architecture. We cannot possibly do all of the job ourselves. So it has to be open source, right? Because then people can look into it, be sure that it's not another SolarWind in the making or something like this, and they can contribute. They can look with their own eyes to the code and say, oh, this is maybe not optimal. We should do it like this or like that. They can carry it to other systems. They can create new scenarios, overall more trustful in the system. And so that's how we came to adopt this open source model as a mean for an end. The mean is the open source tool. We give it all our heart and the best we can. And the end is to gather this global CTI thing for everyone to use. Some of them for free, the one that are making us stronger, and some of them against subscription. As for open source, I think I'm really not worried for open source. I had a question lately. Where do you see open source software? We're already on Mars. Yeah. The furthest man went, except for the probes, Voyager and stuff like that. The open source is already on board those ships. So we cannot go much further. It's powering 70% of all the websites over the internet, 95% of the servers over the internet. It's powering your phone, like half of the phone in the world are running on Android. Mm-hmm. So open source is everywhere. Where I'm really worried though, is for the closed source. How can you be the next SolarWind and come to customers and say, oh, we have a paying license. You don't know what's inside. Trust us. Yeah. Really? Oracle? Hello? What's your future here? People they're the mind switch here. They want to be able to partake into this. They want to be able to review it. They want to be able to fix it. So yes, it comes with string attached. Like when people are upset lately, we saw it like with Log4j. The guys are doing what they can. They were absolutely not paid for anything they did. And they were finger pointed at them like, oh, you did bad job. Yeah, for 10 years, those guys gave their time for free. It was the same for GRSec and PAX. It was the same for OpenSSL. It was the same for a lot of libraries. And some companies are leveraging this, using those tools, making money out of it, and not paying those people. And this is where it's unacceptable. And this is where I think we should have some ruling saying, okay, hey, Amazon, if you're making money out of whatever database, you should pay for it. Sorry about that. It's just not, it's common good for the people that are using it for themselves, not for a major corp that is leveraging it to make money and just not paying the developer behind. Other than that, I'm thinking we are really on the good path with open source.
And we've talked a lot today about the challenges and the increase in threats, but what makes you hopeful about the future?
Yeah, you're right. Usually I get the question around, what is your nightmare? But let's be positive for one. I think the software industry globally is transforming now. People are more aware than ever that our lives rely on this digital surface and we cannot ignore it anymore. So security switch from being the top priority after all the others to being the top priority, period. And that changes the world. It means that if you're a CISO, a CTO, or even a CEO in any company, you cannot possibly ignore that you are at risk, the company is at risk, and your customers are at risk if you don't do the proper job around security. And this is an eye-opener, and I think this industry will be blooming, creating new value, new defense mechanism, and we are day one in security. I'm in this field for 20 years, but I think we're still day one because now it became important, because now lives rely on digital, and your good health or even your mood rely on digital because you like to interact with social network or whatever. Yeah, it became very important to everyone. Everybody has a conscious of that. And what I would like to see is people having their digital citizenship validated somehow when they are having teaching lessons around how to use the internet, the fact that stuff you put on it stay forever, that you should not send a sex to someone that can eventually spam it elsewhere, that you should be careful with your password because this is your life online, hence your life nowadays. And at the end, when they are like 12, 13, 14, you give them an official paper saying, okay, you're allowed to go over the internet. Like you would not let any kid on the road without having a driving license. Yeah. But we use these digital roads way more than the physical one. So that makes sense to me.
Absolutely. And we began the podcast today talking about your origin story, how you got here. And as we come full circle, I'm going to ask if there's a song, movie, book, or individual that has inspired you and helped you on your career that you can share with the listeners today and maybe inspire them too.
Yeah, I think Paulo Coelho, nothing very surprising. The Alchemist is an absolutely amazing book, full of wisdom around the meaning of life. Nothing less, and why do things in life. And I would refer people to it if they didn't have the luck to read it so far. It's very enlightening. Great choice. I'll add that to our Amazon wish list for people so they can find that easily as well. And before I let you go, for anyone listening want to find out more information about anything we talked about today or the work you're doing at CrowdSec or contacting your team, what's the best starting point? We opened a Discord server. So now it's super easy for everyone to join our Discord. Just Google the CrowdSec Discord. I insist on the CrowdSec thing. Don't put an X on the end. It's a totally different game. And feel welcome to interact with the team and join the army. It costs nothing. You don't have to have any knowledge and you're helping each other on top of protecting yourself. So we are out for a fight. We bring the fight, and we want to tip the balance of this war. And you are the soldiers with us. We will provide the weapon and you are the soldier, the frontliner in this battle. So please feel free to join. It's an amazing adventure. I've absolutely loved chatting with you today. One of the things I always say at the end of every episode is technology works best when it brings people together. And how you've created this open source crowd cybersecurity platform and brought cybersecurity experts together is phenomenal. And how you're combating the increasing threats. But more than anything, thank you for coming on, sharing your story and leaving us with that great book as well. Thank you so much. My pleasure. It was really a pleasure. Anytime you need information or you want to have an update, I'll be delighted to join you again. I love chatting with Philippe today about, yes, the biggest issues currently facing cybersecurity, but also learning how open source cybersecurity platforms can combat them. And why these multiplayer firewalls can help limit zero-day attacks and minimise cyberware from attempting to divide and conquer businesses. And more than anything, of course, Philippe has a great story. And if you'd like me to share your story, insights, expertise, or if you have any questions or you want to work with me, as always, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And I cannot thank you enough on this march to 2,000 episodes. Can you believe that? We've come a long way, man. So if you are a regular listener to the show, I'd really appreciate a little boost by a rating and review on whatever platform you listen on. And also send me a screenshot and I'll read it out on the show. So a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.